Done, done, done. Done. On a Sunday morning. Mm-hmm. 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 Sounds good. Let's get our comments rolling and then we will begin the show that we deserve. The show that we deserve. Let's get the comments rolling, folks. Good morning, says Miss Aditi. I think you can hear me. And with that, let's begin. Let's begin. Good morning, says Mr. Tiwari as well. I hope you can hear me. I think you can hear me. I'll just check myself on LinkedIn for a second. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Let's begin. The show that we deserve. The show that we deserve. We cannot take a break. It's so good. Gotta do it every day. Which brings me from a quote to a quote from BoJack Horseman. You gotta do it every day. That's the hard part. No, it begins with, it gets easier. You gotta do it every day. That's the hard part. But it does get easier. Anyway. Bum 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 bum. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Thinker's Frequency. We're having such a good time. This is the peak of human civilization. We're working so hard, doing such good work for ourselves, our parents, our kids, our siblings, our husbands, our wives, our friends, everybody. Well, not other people's husbands and wives, I hope. And just when we thought things couldn't get any better, like they couldn't possibly get any better, they just did. Call it divine intervention, folks, but things just got a whole lot better. Now we have Thinker's Frequency, our daily mental workout, our daily dose of insights and analysis which don't lead to paralysis right before we punch in. So let's continue with our journey of reading between the lines, things that are especially interesting and important in the world of business and finance. Let's go! Oh, but before we go, gotta follow tradition, right? You know the tradition. The sweet and sacred tradition of the simultaneous sip. We'll all sip something together and it'll bring us good luck, as it always does, without fail, every day. And all you need for the simultaneous sip is a cup or mug, a glass, a tank, a chalice, a stein, a canteen jug, a flask, or a vessel of any kind. Pour it with your favorite liquid. I like hot water with some black pepper in it. And here we go. Oh my god. Healing. Let's do it again. Sublime. I don't have the branded Thinker's Frequency cup today, but don't worry, the search operation is on the way. You know what the simultaneous sip says, right? You know what it says? It says that you're not alone. It says that we're in this together. That's such a beautiful thing to say. With that out of the way, let's begin. So, US Appeals Court has found out that Trump's tariffs are illegal. This is not a news. Today is a very slow day for news. Not much happening around the world, it seems. But these people have quoted an appeal court finding that Trump's tariffs are illegal. But Trump says it doesn't matter. If tariffs don't work out, it's gonna bring havoc to the nation and we'll get it sorted out because we have the Supreme Court. So, Supreme Court right now, US Supreme Court is tilting conservative. What that means is that there are more conservative judges on the bench of the US Supreme Court than liberal judges. So, for people who don't know, Supreme Court judges are appointed, by by the House, the Senate, basically the US political system. And it's supposed to be a bipartisan thing, but it's obvious that whenever there is a Republican government or a Republican majority, you get a conservative judge, and whenever there's a liberal Democrat majority, you get a liberal judge. Now, Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court judges started at five, but now there are, I guess, seven Supreme Court judges, and there's something called packing the court. Okay, what packing the court in terms of U.S. Supreme Court judges is concerned, is basically an administration adding the number of judges. Okay, so packing the court, when it seems packing the court, it says that you're gonna add the number of judges, and you're obviously, when you're adding a number of judges, you'll obviously add the side you like, right? So if Republicans are in power, they'd add conservative judges. If Democrats are in power, they'd add liberal judges, and so on and so forth. So packing the court is a pretty big deal, and it's not considered to be nice. You know, for a long time, Democrats said that we don't believe in packing the court, because let's say if we are in power, we add a judge, they'll be there in the, when they come in power, they'll add a judge, and it just the number of judges in the bench on the bench would just keep increasing, right? But at the moment, Supreme Court has a conservative leaning uh, court, essentially. So that's what you know. Hmm. Yeah. So he says that with the help of Supreme Court, we'll be able to reverse this particular ruling from the appeals court. Courts have been very anti, you know, Trump agenda. As you might have noticed, when Trump was levying these tariffs, when Trump cut off the U.S. aid, when all of the moves that Trump had, some district courts essentially ruled against them, right? And then that became a bigger case, that can a district court or can a district judge uh, rule against a federal, you know, uh, move, essentially. Now that kind of a thing holds on in US. You know, who makes money? Of course, lawyers make money. That's where that phrase came from, right? When Mr. Musk said that if you look at China, if you look at the people running China, essentially the folks running the CCP, a lot of them are engineers. And when you look at people running United States, a lot of them are lawyers. That means we are becoming more and more a litigating country, while they are becoming more and more uh, a building country. And we've got to go from a litigating country to a building country, because if everybody's just litigating each other, nothing happens, right? Nothing happens. And that's why uh, but something happens, that is that the lawyers make money, right? And that's where our phrase came from, the lawyers make money. Moving on, so that's going on with the US tariff situation. Good morning, Mr. Patil. Relief measures for exports underway, uh, and mostly it's non-financial support. So a lot of people were saying that, hey, could we just get a SOP or something? But it's not going to get a SOP. It's a multi-tiered strategy to strengthen competitiveness in global markets. That's what the government claims. Obviously, we've discussed this a lot of time, and I hate to repeat it. But for new viewers of Thinkers Frequency, there are only so many things you can do to avoid the crisis which appears or which gets propped up because of the US tariffs on India. So India exports about $90 billion worth of stuff to US. About half of it is getting tariffed. So $45 billion is about 1% of the GDP, right? And when those tariffs get applied, it becomes a very big problem for the country. And those tariffs have been, for revision's sake, uh, hurting especially a few industries which are really hiring a lot of people at the bottom of the pyramid. Number one is the gem and jewelry play, which is a $10 billion industry, exporting to US. Then there's fisheries, which is a $7.5 billion industry, shrimps and all. Then there's textile, right? And then there's auto parts and manufacturing components. So auto parts, uh, this fisheries, the gem and jewelry, and textile. Over and above that, US has already tariffed the steel, 50% tariffs on steel. So 7 billion of that, which is different from this. So five industries getting hurt because of US tariffs. Now, you cannot basically and possibly subsidize these industries, right? That, oh, you're facing tariffs, let us foot the bill. That's not possible. But what you can do is give a moratorium on a loan, better one. Get better financing opportunities, better credit opportunities, some GST refund, acceleration, and so on and so forth, right? This is something that you can do from the capital standpoint. You cannot possibly foot the bill, because if something is getting 50% tariffed, you cannot uh, put half of the money on the table, right? As a government. The second thing you can do is find alternate markets externally, that is going to different countries, talking to having these bilateral talk agreements, right, bilateral trade agreements with each country, and figuring out if they can absorb some of the stuff, right? So what you do is you're talking to UK and you say, oh, could you take some more textile, right, or could you take some more gem and jewelry, and so on and so forth. uh, that is one. Number two is you can actually boost the consumption economy, the country's internal consumption economy. Government has been on it, on steroids. They've been really, really looking forward to pushing it up. The one way they did it was by cancelling income tax for wages below 12 lakh per annum. Then they simplified the GST play. 12% went into 5%, then 5%, 18%. The 28% went into 18%. So they basically reduced GST. 12% slab, 99% of the items under 12% slab went into 5%, which was great, right? So they rationalized that. RBI essentially reduced the interest rates, the repo rate, which basically makes the lending cheaper. If the lending becomes cheaper, businesses borrow more. If businesses borrow more, new hiring happens, and so on and so forth. Public capex is obviously, government capex is on. It did well. So a lot of things for consumption economy. So what did we talk about? Consumption play, finding alternate markets, supporting the exports through various schemes, non-financial. Yeah, that's pretty much what you can do as an economy, right? And that's what the government is trying to do. Uh, Now they are also in a slightly unrelated story. They have also letting in 100% FDI in insurance. Now, can you link the 100% FDI in insurance to this particular story? Because as Mr. Leonardo da Vinci said, realize that everything connects to everything else, right? 100% FDI in insurance. What would that lead to? Well, insurance is an industry which is essentially dependent on a lot of float. Float is the money that you store but which is not yours. Okay? Now, when insurance companies take premiums for you, that's not their earning, right? Because someday they'll have to pay that premium back when you actually use that insurance, God forbid. But till the time you don't use it, they have that money lying around. Now, what do they do with that money lying around? What does the insurance industry do with the money lying around? It basically invests in the capital markets. Okay. Now, the government has allowed 100% FDI for domestic capital investment companies. That means the companies which are coming to with the 100% FDI, they will essentially be investing in Indian capital markets. What happens when gets Indian capital market gets more flux of the insurance money, because insurance industry has like lakhs of crores of float, lakhs of crores, right? So much money that you can't imagine. And that's when Indian insurance penetration is pretty low right now. So they've allowed 100% FDI. So the government is like going all guns blazing as far as the whole play, and 100% FDI is a step in that direction. A few comments. Mr. Patil says, one question: why some parts are exempted? Can we discuss why America decided to excuse half of imports from tariff? How it helps USA? Wow, that's a great insight about insurance companies. Well, you're welcome, Mr. Patil. So yeah, they have not laid tariffs on pharma, right? Because if they laid tariffs on pharma right away, uh, America won't have the medicines. Like, America is extremely dependent on the generic medicines that India exports. About 60-70% of their generic imports, medicine imports, come from India, right? So if they tariff that, the people will stop dropping dead instantly. But that said, Mr. Trump has actually talked to his companies, the pharmaceutical companies, that advise them to instantly start investing in US and making shifting those companies to India. Oh, sorry, to US, because if they don't, he'll have 250% of tariffs on those companies. So essentially, he has nudged the US companies to stop with this imports of APIs, of Chinese APIs and Indian generics to that extent, because the dependency needs to be curbed. Basically, Trump's goal is that by 2028, America would be making real steel, and America would be making real, pharmaceuticals, because 90% of American APIs come from China, right? So we've discussed this. You would remember that if America and China go into a hot war tomorrow, China doesn't have to fire any bullet, because it'll just stop the API supply, and the entire United States will start dropping dead, right? No antibiotics for you guys. So obviously that's an extreme situation. That's a hypothetical, not saying it's gonna happen or whatever, but you know the drill, right? So by 2028, they essentially want to curb these dependencies, but till the time they are dependent, they won't essentially tariff the pharma supplies. Pharma is a large part of it, about 10-15 billion dollars, and the rest of it is some electronic supplies. Electronics is the similar game, because uh, they want to have their own industry, but it takes time, right? For them to manufacture things. So they can't do that, because if they do that, it starts hurting them, right? That's the tariff play. You've got to play it very intelligently, that it doesn't hurt you, it doesn't bite your butt, right? So that's that. One second. So there's a report about thieves driving away with trending SUVs. Tech savvy thieves drive away with SUVs, sports vehicles from Hyundai, Toyota, key targets. Surge in SUV theft, cases of Kia Seltos, Tata Safari, Mahindra Scorpio, and so on and so forth. Right? Insurance impact. Uh, 91,000 of premiums were collected by insurance companies in FY24. That were motor premiums. So what I talked about, the just motor premiums, by the way, are 91,000 crores. That's the money that insurance companies collected from just automotive guys, right? In 1 year, 91,000 crores. So, uh, can you guess uh, why there's more theft of SUVs? Can you guess why SUVs are facing more theft from tech savvy guys? It's just a very simple guess. I mean, you can guess, I'm sure. We've talked about this. Viewers of Thinkers Frequency would remember why this makes total sense, right? Because the small cars are not selling, essentially. 66% of all cars that are selling in India right now are SUVs, right? And SUVs are the mid-market segment. So what's selling more will be stolen more. Isn't that like an ironclad rule of ratio and proportionality, right? What's selling more will get stolen more. And beyond SUVs, you have very expensive cars, right? They're again very rare. They're the long tail that's very small number but very high value. They obviously have much more security detailing, right? The hatchbacks and the sedans, they don't make sense because they're not selling, and they cost less, so there's less incentive for them to steal. 66% of what's selling is SUV, and they are getting sold more. So that's no surprise for anybody, least of all the viewers of Thinkers Frequency, right? GEO training props pops up as keyword in pros search. So we've discussed about this quite in heavy detail, that uh, SEO is so yesterday, right? SEO has become pretty yesterday, which is a big deal. We talked about how AI summarization of search results by Google led to 80% decline, over 80%, more than 80% decline in the traffic for the companies, right? For the people who publish those articles, because people are essentially just reading the AI summary. 1 out of or 2 out of 10 people are essentially clicking on the backlinks, right? Now, this has obviously changed how search engine optimization also works, right? For a long time, for about 20 years, search engine optimization was the mainstay of digital marketing, right? If you wanted to market yourself, you had to search engine optimize yourself, right? But search engine optimization, how valuable is it now? Since you know that about there's a decline of 80% in the traffic that goes, right? So how much would you really backlink your articles? How much would you really do the keyword tagging and so on and so forth when it comes to that? Because now you've got to optimize yourself for the GEO, that is generative AI, generative search engine optimization, right? That's the next frontier, and that shrinks the market by a lot, right? If you talked about search engine optimization, you were looking at least 10 to 15 results or 20 results, 2 pages, right, worth of material. That was the market. With GEO, what you're looking at is just 3 to 5 sources, right? So you've got to arrive at those 3 to 5 sources, and you've got to basically be searchable on those very, very narrow outcomes, right? So we discussed how this is a pretty interesting paradigm, because Google has found a way to kill content. Why do you know kill content? How why am I saying killing content? How has Google found out a way to kill content? Well, it's pretty simple, because why would you publish content, right? You publish content so that it gets views, it gets viewed, it gets read, and then basis those readings you could sell some ads, and if you sell some ads you make some money, right? That's what you work for. Now, suddenly what Google starts doing is it starts summarizing an aggregate of whatever you've written, because you wrote something, somebody else wrote something, it aggregated and wrote an AI summary. Now, suddenly you were getting 10 viewers earlier, now you're getting 1, right? Because that was the amount, like it reduced by 20%, 80% the click through ratio for the source of that summary. Now, how much of that is going to come to you, right? So basically 90% of your traffic just went off. Now you obviously won't be able to sell ads as before. You will have to be running subscriptions and so on. How many subscriptions can you sell? It's very hard. So you can't sell ads, you can't sell subscriptions. You stop writing. Now here comes the kicker. If you stop writing, and a lot of people like you stop writing, what will Google summarize, right? What will Google summarize? Will it just summarize the top particular publishers who are not dependent on Google as much? Is that the play? If that's the play, essentially what Google has done is, or what AI has done, it's found a way to kill the source. Now, there's another kicker, right? If the content gets killed, what will Google summarize? Okay, so Google gets a lot of content, it summarizes, puts it up. People don't go to the source. Sources start dying. What will Google summarize, right? So this is a pretty interesting play. But right now, people are training themselves for GEO, which is the new frontier, right? A comment from Mr. Tiwari: AI summaries are heavily dependent on your web page rank and web search rank. Yeah, but not entirely. But not entirely, Mr. Tiwari. I'm sure you're aware of that. Moving on, India and Japan are basically looking at strengthening their relationship. We've talked a lot about that. We've talked a lot about how India and Japan are essentially looking at more of maritime collaboration, defense collaboration. Uh, Japan is supplying some sort of radar material for the ships, on the seas. They're talking about defense collaboration. They're talking about investments in India. They're talking about a lot of manufacturing in India. India's pitch to Japan was "Make in India for the world." That pitch gets diluted now in this particular paradigm, but that's what India sold to Japan. And you can see what Japanese companies are doing in India, right? Sumitomo Mitsui, that's a Japanese bank. It's looking at taking over Yes Bank, investing a lot of money. We talked about it. They bought about 24.99%, right? Japanese companies are already in action as far as India is considered, but that particular strength that particular play is getting strengthened as far as the whole collaboration is considered. Mr. Modi actually, traveled in a bullet train with the Prime Minister of Japan, who is Shigeru Ishiba. So that's going on. A lot of moves as far as the rail transport. Japan is supposed to be starting a bullet train operation in India. So a lot of work is going on as far as Japanese Indian collaboration is concerned. It's very important for two reasons. Number one, Japan brings a lot of hardware expertise, right? Real deep tech expertise. And then Japan is strategically important for India to counter the whole China issue, right? Because that's a very big problem. So the reason why Japan is essentially looking at these exports to India and some collaboration as far as defense in with India is because Japan is facing the similar situation with China in the South China Sea, or the Eastern Sea, basically the sea frontier, right, where China is really going full ballistic. So that particular play is on. That's pretty solid. Japan has a very interesting history. Japan is a very beautiful country. If you want to read something related to Japan, of course, Shoe Dog covers a lot of Japan. We've talked about it. A lot of viewers of Thinkers Frequency have already read Shoe Dog. But a really good book as far as Japan is considered is the autobiography of Akio Morita sir. Akio Morita sir was the founder of Sony. Sony was basically Apple before Apple, right? Walkman and everything. He really painted a very good picture of Japan. Now, why is he the right person to read about Japan? Because he comes from a very big family, very affluent family. His family used to make sake, the drinks, right? The Japanese rice wine, sake. Came from a rich family, became an engineer, didn't join the family business, worked with the government. He was enlisted in the Japanese army during the World War. He was in the research play, electronics research. Then Japan got nuked, and US became sort of the, let's say, US essentially became the ruling force of Japan. Japan was an independent democracy, of course, but a lot of US influence. So US, and Japanese relationship, the trading relationship, he saw it and he started doing electronics. It grew. Japan's influence in US grew, US influence in Japan grew, and his story essentially shed a lot of light on the growth of Japan in this particular day and age. So you get a lot of ideas about Japanese culture before everything crashed, right? So Japanese economy was a real challenger to US economy back in the 80s, 70s and 80s. because it was growing real fast. It was growing real fast, and it was doing wonders. Japanese manufacturing was killing it, right? Toyota, Yamaha, Sony, Panasonic, Mitsubishi, and so on. A lot of companies were thriving, but then Japan's economy crashed in 1990. Like, it totally crashed. So Japan is known for its work culture. There's something called karoshi. Japanese people are very hardworking, and Japan literally has a word for death due to overwork, which is called karoshi, right? So people used to work so fast in Japan, so hard, that some of them died due to overwork. They created a word for it. They have a word for it, karoshi. And uh, Japan's life is so fast, or like Tokyo, life in Tokyo is so fast that they used to have, or they still have actually, sado centers. Sado is basically a small cup of tea, very small cup of tea, that you drink for hours. So you sit in that center, distraction free, and you're drinking that very small cup of tea for hours, basically to calm your mind. So Japan has a very, very interesting culture, and Japan and Indian relationship has been very solid. So if you look at Maruti Suzuki, uh, you know it's Japanese, right? Toyota is very strong in India. Japanese, a lot of stuff. So India can, and Japan makes a lot of foreign investments, because Japanese economy itself is not growing at all, right? So yeah, that's that. I hope I gave you a nice primer. So the biography of Soichiro Honda, sir, huge respect. The biography of Akio Morita, made in Japan. The biography of, if you can read, Torakosu Yamaha, that will give you a very, very historical perspective, like 1865 to 1920s, the early Japan, right? So great country, extraordinary country, and India is looking at strengthening its relationships with Japan. Of course, I'm also a very big fan of Japanese movie. I've recommended Hirokazu Koreeda's movies. Hirokazu Koreeda sir is like my favorite director. He's a legend, extraordinary director. Still Walking, great movie, made me cry buckets. Then there's After the Storm, same. Our Little Sister, extraordinary work. So great job. By the way, if you're looking at Japan, there's a movie called Rashomon. It's an Akira Kurosawa movie. It's a 1950s black and white movie. 1950. The movie came out in 1950, and it's called Rashomon. Okay, so what Rashomon says, I'm sorry, what Rashomon showed is that there's a story. Okay, a husband and a wife, a couple, are going through a forest, and then comes a bandit who actually kills the husband and rapes the wife, and moves on. So this is the story. But what the movie does is, this particular story, it shows from the perspective of the husband first. Okay, so you see this story happening from the POV of the husband. Now he sees whatever is happening. He has his wife, they have a relationship, his view on that relationship. Then he sees the bandit as the bad guy. He tries to fight the bandit, he gets killed, right? He sees his wife flirting with the bandit a little, the usual male insecurity, and so on and so forth. The same story, then you see from the perspective of the wife, right? Now she sees her husband in a certain way, the bandit in a certain way, her husband fighting to the bandit, getting killed, she getting violated by the bandit, and so on and so forth, right? Her perspective, the story seems completely different. The same story seems completely different when viewed from the POV of the wife. Then the same story is shown from the POV of the bandit. He sees himself as a hero. He sees the husband as a meek character, and so on and so forth. The same story seems absolutely different from his perspective, right? And then the same story is viewed from the third party perspective of a saint who was viewing everything. Okay, that is Rashomon. One story viewed from different POVs, and how those POVs essentially changed the story. The same story is just something else when viewed from somebody else's POV. Now that movie is so influential that this thing is called Rashomon effect. where things change. The story changes when you just change the POV, right? Now I am doing Thinker's Frequency. You are watching Thinker's Frequency. You're reading. I'm reading. How I view this story is completely different from how you view the story, right? Uh, do I have to read subtitles all the time, or is it in English? Of course, it's not in English, Mr. Tiwari. It's in Japanese. It's 1950, so it's not in English. You'll have to read the subtitles, but you won't regret it. It's one of those movies which are very important, and also it's not a boring movie. So there are a lot of movies which are important, but they are very very boring, right? They are very difficult to watch. Rashomon is not one of them. So that was my primer to Japan. I hope you liked it. Let's move forward. The reason I did this was because today is a very slow day for news. So apart from the political chit chat, there's not much as far as the papers are considered. The business news, very very meek day. Moving on. Ethanol blends in fuel don't impact mileage. Industry body says. Now, something scary. This particular conversation is happening. A lot of back and forth is happening as far as the whole ethanol debate is happening. Right now, listen to this guy. He is the Prashant K. Banerjee, director, executive director at Industry Body Society, SIAM basically. SIAM, the guys who conduct the Auto Expo. He says, no, sorry. It's Vikram Gulati, executive vice president in Toyota Kirloskar Motor, said that the concerns on E220 affecting fuel efficiency drastically or adversely impacting vehicle engines are largely unfounded and not supported by scientific evidence or expert analysis. Now, what do you make of this? What do you make of this, right? Whenever a guy invokes science or expert analysis as an argument, right, just know that there's a lot of bullshit. So you've got to cover your nose. Whenever somebody says that these concerns are majorly wrong because they are not corroborated with scientific analysis and expert analysis. So basically this particular argument is that, hey, you don't know, we know, our scientists know, our experts know, and what you're seeing right now happening to your car is a lie, right? So direct rejection of an anecdotal evidence, or let's say if not an anecdotal but a statistically significant anecdotal evidence, right, is just a very very bad way to argue things. However, these people say that industry body assure of warranties in case of issues in all vehicles on account of E20 usage. They say we are willing to provide warranties, and we believe that these issues are overstated. Now, a very important discussion, by the way, on this is which will make you feel good, perhaps, is that the quality of discourse that we have when it comes to, let's say, journalism in India is so poor, so poor. I'm sure you must have read or heard that Mr. Nitin Gadkari's son has an ethanol blending company, and it has done a revenue of hundreds of crores when it was a very small company earlier, which proves that there is some sort of conflict of interest, because Mr. Nitin Gadkari has been building the ethanol play up, right? That's the level of discourse that we have. Like Mr. Nitin Gadkari's son has an ethanol blending company, and somehow it's supposed to be a conflict of interest because his father is touting ethanol blending. Now, what is the problem with that line of argument, right? There is just one particular play which can demolish that argument, just one line to demolish that argument, right? And that line is, was and is Mr. Nitin Gadkari transparent about his stance on ethanol? Yes or no? Has he been very very transparent about his stance on ethanol? and his rationale on why ethanol is important for the country? The answer is yes. The answer is yes. So there, that means that there's no proprietary information, or there's no specific insider information available, uh, which would not have been utilized by anybody else. If not, everybody's son should be in ethanol blending right now, right? Because it makes a good business. Now, if he's been transparent about why ethanol is important, right? So his rationale has been that ethanol blending in fuel is very important because India imports a lot of fuel, which drains our exchequer, which basically ruins the country. We import so much of crude, so much of petrol, so much of fuel that are essentially we're draining on our exports. Our forex gets depleted because of these imports. Then our agriculture economy, which is basically 19% of our GDP, really needs some more money because it engages a lot of people and it doesn't make money. And ethanol gives a lot of opportunities for agriculture sector to actually make a lot of money, right? Not just sugarcane, but also rice, extra maize, and so on and so forth. So a lot of crops can lead to ethanol production. So this gives some boost as far as the whole agricultural economy is considered. He said that we could grow the agricultural GDP contribution from 19% to 22%, right? Because farmers could be making that money. So instead of importing fuel from outside, we could be using fuel that comes from farmers, right? And number two, it's cleaner, right? So the emissions are better. So he's being very transparent about ethanol. How is his son running an ethanol company a problem? Does that make sense to you guys? Moving on. Ather has essentially unveiled a new platform. Ather is essentially running they are a pretty good engineering operation. So they say that our earlier platform, the one which we used for 450 and so on, they can only they, it can you can only do so much with that platform, and this particular platform allows us to build better. It allows us to service faster. It allows us to actually work our way around the machine much more. So it's an engineering itch that we've been able to fulfill with a new platform for Ather. Some of those things had become platform restricted, and the current platform was just not making it possible to build beyond a certain point. So some new mechanical changes will be there, chassis and so on and so forth, some electronics. So Ather is really flying off, in a lot of ways, a lot of efficiencies with the new platform, new vehicle development getting better, right? Moving on. Adani Power is investing 10,500 crores in capex, 8,800 megawatt plant. Adani is India's largest thermal play, thermal energy generation play. So they are basically investing 10,500 crores in the capex for an 800 megawatt power plant. This is very necessary for the base load management. So when it comes to power, it's base load, and then so for base load, you've got to have a very, very predictable power supply. You cannot be using, let's say, solar for base load, or wind for base load, or let's say anything else basically for base load, because why? It needs to be predictable, and coal unfortunately is very predictable, which brings us to that play, right? Torrent set to a 1600 megawatt plant with 22,000 crores. So same goes with Torrent, 22,000 crore capex for the base load play, right? Moving on. There's a report on elephants dying because of railway tracks. 12 elephants, 17 elephants dying. That's very sad for me. I love elephants. I love animals, and elephants are basically getting in the way of rail tracks because rail tracks are cutting through the forest lines and so on and so forth. So it's leading to a hazard for elephant safety. Now, looking at that report, what's important is that there's a very specific solution for this problem. It's called elephant EIDS. So let me say elephant intrusion detection system. So it's basically a detection system which figures out uh, when elephants are coming, and with that detection system, these trains can be warned. And then there's some siren system which is essentially which informs elephants to stay away and so on. It's called elephant intrusion detection system, which can pick up elephant movements at least 20 meters. So it basically measures the thump or the ground thump which happens because of elephants. Now, to test that particular system, they are importing elephants from different areas. They sent letters to a lot of places. Nothing could work. But at the end of the day, they went to Antara, the Ambani Park, the something like a zoo that they've created, a big one. So they went there and they ferried a bunch of elephants to train this particular system. So imagine there's a company which makes systems for detection of elephants and their intrusion in the rail tracks, and there's money in this play, right? Just imagine how niche can you be, right? Designated elephant corridors. The system will track and display continuous elephant movements from as far as 150 to 200 meters from the center of the track. So not just that, they've also created something like a elephant pass, essentially bridges, elephant bridges. Now they create bridges over the tracks, and just as they created that bridge in Hazaribagh, elephants stopped coming, and it got used by other animals. So they are now placing some sort of orchards and fruits and so on and so forth to lure elephants to use that particular bridge instead of using. So just imagine the niche, so niche nature of this particular problem, that elephants unfortunately are getting hit by trains. Now during the daytime, these boogie drivers, the car drivers, basically the train drivers, they can spot elephants and they can do something about it. However, at night their vision gets restricted to a bunch of meters, right? So unfortunately, and these reports, the numbers, 19 killed in 2019, 14 in 2020, 12 in 2021, and so on and so forth. Now these numbers are obviously underreported because Tripura and these places cannot be doing accurate reporting. Data does not include figures from all states. No data available from Tripura and Uttarakhand in a couple of years. And so that's the play. Such niche nature of the problem, and very very specific set of businesses that are looking at fulfilling it, which is awesome, right? Loco Pilot. Moving on, there's a report on rush of blood. They're saying that adventure sports in India are actually safety concerns around those adventure sports in India are a problem, like paragliding in Bir. They took some lives. Unfortunately, the paragliding went off, and some couple of people, a lot of people have actually, some river rafting, paragliding. There was a report where in Manali the zip line essentially fell, and the girl fell from like great height, and she unfortunately passed away. Rest in peace. So they are basically talking about lacking regulations and lacking safety norms, and some companies cutting corners as far as this particular play is considered. Now I have been to Bir. I went from Delhi to Bir on a bike. It was a 14-hour long ride. It's from Delhi, it's about 560 kilometers. So I did that in one day. I bike long distance. So I did that in just one day, and I did the paragliding as well, and I survived. And more than the paragliding, what was more thrilling and more unsafe for me was the drive to that point. And that guy, was the way he was driving, that was more more dangerous than the paragliding experience itself. But yeah, adventure tourism market right now is $16.7 billion in 2024, and that's estimated. And 2033, they're projecting about 8 years from now, $86 billion. So they are projecting $86 billion in 2033. And 2024, they say $16 billion. I doubt that figure somehow. Do you doubt this figure? $16 billion in 2023. Adventure tourism market worth 16.7 billion. Worth 16.7 billion. Are they talking about revenues? Because revenues cannot be 16.7 billion. Tourism as an industry itself is not that high. But that could be how they choose 2033 to predict. That is obviously a question. Seems random year selection. No, so they must have started this report in 2023, right? So they estimated 2024 and projected 2023. So they did a 10-year projection. But my concern is the $16.7 billion figure. Do you think that this is like way up, right? What is the revenue of Indian tourism? Indian tourism revenue 2023, let's say 2024. $250 billion. Oh, I was mistaken, I think. Tourism's contribution to GDP is $250 billion. Yeah, then it makes sense, right? Then it makes sense. If foreign tourist arrivals 9.66 million, foreign exchange earnings 2,77,000 crores. Foreign exchange earnings from tourism were $28 billion. Yeah, foreign exchange earnings were $28 billion. They are saying that India's tourism revenue reached $4 billion in December 2024. So 1 month, $4 billion in tourism. So $40-50 billion, some estimates differ. If India is essentially a $250 billion tourism country, I doubt it, by the way. Tourism and hospitality expected to grow to 123 billion in CY 30. So a lot of conflicting figures. They're saying Indian tourism market to hit $38 billion in 2033. Now that's screwed up. The World Travel and Tourism Council calculated tourism generated $160 billion in revenues. Right? So a lot of conflicting figures. We'll have to do the math on this one. We'll have to go deep on this one. But I doubt this particular number. $16 billion for adventure tourism in India. India basically doesn't have anything for adventure tourism, man. Right? What do we have? Like river rafting. Then there is hot air balloons. Then there's some paragliding, some bungee jumping. And this is restricted to what? Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand. Right? There's nothing as far as Haryana is considered. There's nothing as far as Delhi, Punjab is considered. There's nothing as far as Jammu and Kashmir is considered. So there's just Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand. These two states in the north. Then if you go south, you have Kerala. Right? You have Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. But not much of adventure sports there. So what you're saying is essentially like $16 billion going into 6 states. Come on. Anyway. So paragliding, paramotoring, hot air ballooning, skydiving, parachutes, surfing, sailing, motorboating, windsurfing, zip lining, and mountaineering. These are the plays. And the report says that we need a lot of, safety, regulations and safety implementation. Sometimes people import Mr. Tiwari says driving in NCR is itself adventure sports. Well, that is true. In that case, the $250 billion makes sense, right? Because the number of cars that we are selling makes up for that. So yeah, these people are saying that these things need to have some sort of safety vest. But is regulation a good idea? That is a good question. There needs to be some regulation, of course. but you can't over regulate. And obviously, the problem is the implementation of existing regulations, right? Like a paragliding guy needs to be certified from X number of places, he needs to spend 4 to 5 lakhs on his certification, on his training, and so on and so forth, right? That is not getting implemented, right? The material needs to have some sort of checks and so on and so forth. Whatever existing regulations exist, they are not getting you know, uh, taken seriously. They're not getting implemented well, which is leading to these problems. So basically, this works as a PSA. Whichever service you're using, ask for their certifications, ask for safety, and so that you don't get hurt. Right? That's very important. Moving on. Russia, China join hands as Putin slams discriminatory sanctions. Mr. Putin is in a league of his own. You know, he a full-fledged war waged on Ukraine, and he's calling the tariffs on him as discriminatory, which is a big deal. But China and Russia are very close, which was the fear of American right. American right said that a war with Russia, with Ukraine as a proxy, will drive it in the arms of China, and that will be the death knell for American economy, right? Because China and Russia, China is the largest economy of the world, PPP adjusted. Russia is the largest landmass. Both of these countries have the largest amount of people. If these two countries collide, or if these two countries become hand in glove, US is screwed, which is exactly what happened. But when it came to par with them, they made an even bigger mistake by leading India into the arms of China as well, right? With the whole tariff situation, screwed it up, right? Now they have the most number of people, the most number of the biggest economic contribution, the fastest growing economy, and the largest landmass together. So US really screwed itself there. Moving on. The man who read 3,599 books in his lifetime, 92-year-old Dan Pelzer, reading achievement. Well, 3,599 books in a lifetime is an achievement worth coming in the newspaper. So you can imagine, right? Reading is such a rare activity that 3,599, if you read like 1,000 books, so that's what I discovered when I got on my reading journey. As I've told you, I ran this campaign, 52 books in a year. I did that from 2012 to 2022. Couldn't read 52 in any of those years, but averaged 40. Ended up reading like 450 books in these 11 years. When I started reading, I realized that if you've read 10 books, just 10 books, okay, you are more well read than 90% of people, right? If you've read 50 books, you've read more than 95% of people. Or maybe even if you've read 100 books, you're more well read than like almost everybody. You're like at the 99th percentile. Just 100 books. Just 100 books, and you're essentially, more well read than almost anybody. Then, beyond that, you start competing in the intelligence here. People who read a lot. Then you got to read a little more. But basically, 100 books is the threshold where things just go really heavy for you. You start sounding a bit different. With that, we come to the end of the 98th episode of Thinker's Frequency, our daily mental workout, our daily dose of insights and analysis which don't lead to paralysis right before we punch in. A very slow day for news today, but I hope I made it up with that primer on Japan and everything else. I hope you liked the episode. I hope you found value. I loved it as always. I love talking about these things with you. Big thanks to Miss Aditi, Mr. Tiwari, Mr. Patil, and everybody else who joined on LinkedIn and YouTube. Thank you so much. I hope you have a beautiful day, personally and professionally. It's 9:06. We'll punch in anytime. Daily mental workout, daily dose of insights and analysis. Just don't lead to paralysis right before we punch in. Have a beautiful day, guys. See you. I'll be there, same place, same time, hopefully tomorrow. Bye-bye. Thanks for the great episode, says Miss Aditi. Thank you.